Okay, um, let's jump into this. We're in the Living Earth text, and we're in Unit 3, Evolving Earth 3.6. We're looking at the mechanisms for evolution. The essential question for this is: what are Charles Darwin's contributions to our understanding about evolution? So go ahead and write that down. Draw out your Cornell note template. Make sure you put the date. Put your reference, Discovery Education, Living Earth 3.6, and we're looking at Explore number 1. See that 1 there correlates to the 1 over here. Okay, and tell me what you know or what you think. Who was Charles Darwin? Was he important? What were his contributions? Okay, hopefully you took care of that. So, Roman number 1: where did all the species on Earth come from? This is the burning question of the day. Not today, but not even the 20th century. We're going back to the 19th century, which means the 1800s. Um, there were a growing number of scientists who were starting to wonder about the origin of all of life, all the different species that are out there. What could account for this? And if we were to just sum it up, Charles Darwin is the one who really came up with uh, the idea of evolution. He was not necessarily the first one. There was another person named Alfred Wallace who was a contemporary who was working along the same lines. But Charles Darwin ultimately was the one who first published his ideas. And so we're going to kind of take a little dive into that and explore that, okay? So, originally, if you take a look at number 1 here, originally scientists thought that the Earth was only a few thousand years old. What changed that idea was discoveries in a totally different field, the field of geology. Were beginning to change these ideas. Uh, Ideas about continental drift were starting to come up. The idea that continents may have maybe formed a supercontinent at one time. These were certainly beginning to change people's ideas about the age of Earth, the fact that Earth seemed to be made of different layers. It was stratified, and older layers were on bottom, younger layers were on top, as you've learned about the laws of superposition. We're starting to make people think about really the age of Earth and even really life. What was what was the role of life? How did that fit into this bigger puzzle? Well, Charles Darwin originally wanted to be a pastor, but he was also a naturalist. He was interested uh, in living organisms. He experimented on breeding different organisms like pigeons, beetles, and he was curious about all the different ways that you could, produce hybrids just by doing artificial selection. Breeding different animals to produce different things. He was offered a position on with the English Navy to be the chief naturalist for, I think it was the Beagle was the name of the ship, and he accepted the position. It was he was going to be out at sea for several years, and his job was to observe everything natural, all the natural phenomena, and report back on what he saw. And this turned out to be uh, an important position for him. His observations on everything from the biodiversity of life that he saw, the fossils that he encountered that are no longer visible to us today, uh, the fact that you saw sea fossils, elevations that were high, far above sea level, um, started to make him think about the origin of life. And this actually created the impetus for what would become his theory on natural selection or evolution, and the idea on the origin of all species on Earth. And this was not something that came quickly. He spent the next 20 years after that voyage formulating his ideas. Like we said, Alfred Wallace was another contemporary of his who was also thinking along the same lines. Um, they both had presented their ideas, but it was ultimately Charles Darwin who published his ideas, his theory on natural selection. At first, he was hesitant to do this. He was well aware that it would be not accepted by the religious community. It would be challenged that way. But needless to say, I think the fact that Wallace was also working on the same ideas uh, created the pressure that Darwin needed to actually act. So he published his book, and ultimately the scientific community began to accept his ideas, and that's what we have today. Uh, this idea of evolution, this idea of natural selection. We can definitely thank both of them. We can thank both Wallace and Charles Darwin, but certainly the credit goes to Charles Darwin, especially as uh, the principal person involved in his theory of evolution. So that's his role. Uh, think of him as the grandfather of evolution, if you want to. He is the one that brought that idea to the forefront, and we have plenty of different fields of science that continually corroborate his theory there, and that's why it's not a hypothesis anymore. It's a really well established theory, and as technology continues to evolve, I don't say that word lightly. We only continue to substantiate his ideas, which further makes his theory exactly that, a theory. So, which is a well accepted, well established idea. So, anyway, take a moment, summarize, if you will, in a sentence or two, in a summary paragraph, what you learned, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.